Tell you what, the trash part back.
A couple minutes behind tonight, I'm gonna go ahead and call the special budget hearing meeting to order at 6:03 p.m. We're gonna begin with the budget hearing this evening, and what we're gonna do is have Dr. Claus give us a presentation on the budget and then take comments on the budget itself at the end. So a public forum will be at the end of the budget hearing. That'll give folks a chance to listen to the comments from Dr. Claus and additional questions, including after those in the public comment. There will also be public comment at our regular board meeting following this. So, with that, I will turn it over to you for a presentation of our budget for the 24-25 year.
Alright, so we go pretty in depth here. The budget hearing really is only about the expenses, but I'm going to kind of cover all of it. And so how we got to that moment along with our expenses as well. But I wanted to begin with just an overview of what our budget for our proposed budget for 24-25 looks like. The general fund budget being $54,871,784. I'm going to go over the four taxing points to begin with. Special billing of $12,545,048. The bond fund of $16,068,763. And then our QC puff budget of $643,188. All in, if you use all of our funds throughout the entire district, the 24-25 proposed budget is $93,263,993. I'm going to break down several of these, especially the taxable ones as well. Something to think about or remember is that these are the NDE budget numbers, and so these are worst case scenario. These are larger of all of them. They're not all actual what we anticipate that we'd spend within each of those, and so I'm going to pick on the QC puff budget this year. We put $643,000 because we have some funds within that account that we may need to expend that we're not planning on as of today. But if that showed up, we want to be able to do that. And so that gets added in, although it's not a planned expenditure without that at this moment. And so those are all kind of worst case scenario type numbers. With that, our total tax asking is $38,469,191. And our proposed levy for the year would be $1.35.8. And we'll dig in deeper on each of those as we go through. Okay, so trying to turn this hearing or this presentation into like sections sort of building on each other. And the very first one was just a little bit about us at Bennington Public Schools, because who we are sort of shapes what our budget is going to look like. And so, like everything at Bennington, we will always begin with growth. And so our numbers for this year, we have a growth rate of 2.84%, which is one of the lowest growth rates that we've had in a while. It still equates to about 130 students that we added throughout this school year, which is more than almost every district in the state of Nebraska, but it is slow where Bennington has been in previous years as well. And so with that, we're still anticipating 5,000 students by the 28-29 school year with what we know as of today. To educate those 4,300 students, not including preschool, we have 552 staff members, with 388 being certified and 164 being support staff. And so this is a humongous portion of our budget and something that's important for us to talk about. Next part of our story here at Bennington is our valuation. And so this is kind of the number one driver of what the budget looks like, especially tax askings for the upcoming year. and that's our valuation as a district. And so as a district, so from 2020 to 2024, we have increased from just about 1.7 billion to 2.8 billion over that time. More specifically, from last year to this year, we had a 10.02% increase because our valuation went up $258 million. And so you'll see those numbers throughout, but just a little bit of history of where we've been and where we are this year. Our 10-year average, we've increased 12.48%. The last 5 years, we've been 11.32. The 5 years before that, we were 13.64. We have not seen a decrease or an increase below 10% in over a decade at this point. A few reminders on just what that looks like here at Bennington Public Schools. About 92% of our total valuation comes from residential and centrally assessed. About 4% from ag and personal property, about 4.2% from commercial, which is fairly low compared to most. We'll talk about that more later in the school year. And then our county breakdown, we're 97.3% Douglas County and 2.7% Washington County. Okay, so that was a little bit about us. Kind of the next step is, what does the Nebraska funding system looks like? So we know us, now let's talk about the system before we look into the numbers. Just kind of a reminder of what the system looks like. The most important thing to us is the top line, which is equalization aid. You're going to hear me say this about 13 times during this presentation, but equalization aid is such an important part of what our funding looks like here at Bennington. As a reminder of what that looks like, the state determines our needs. They look at the number of students we have, the type of students that we have, and they say, as basic level, that means no addition, just a basic level, you need X amount of dollars in order to operate. They then pretend like we've been taxed at $1, and then they say, okay, that is X amount of money. If you don't have enough, we'll fill the gap, and that would be our equalization aid. And so some schools, when they pretend like they tax at $1, it's significantly more than what their needs are, and so they're able to lower the levy. For us, we don't get to what our needs are, and so the state funds the difference. And so this year, we are one of the most reliant on equalization aid schools in the entire state of Nebraska. This year, it accounts for 14.60% of our basic funding. I'm going to show you some graphics earlier of how that all looks, but it is really important to us, that equalization aid, because there's maybe 50, I don't know if the official number is anymore, about 50 to 60 schools in the entire state have equalization aid at this point out of 234 school districts. So it's becoming more and more rare. So as our valuation increases, the model pretends like we tax at $1, that's our local effort rate, and then our equalization aid drops. Last year, there was a $1,500 per student that was provided by the state of Nebraska. The person believed that if we give every school $1,500, the school would be able to lower the levy, except if you were an equalized school district. And so the equalization aid brings in $5 million, but so if we were at 20 million equalization aid, and that brought in 5, our equalization aid went to 15. It was $1 in, $1 out. It did absolutely zero for equalized schools. If you were unequalized, it was additional state aid, which then you were able to shrink your levy down. Bennington was not in that situation. The thing that was beneficial to us was the special education funding. So in previous years, sped funding was reimbursed at 50%. So if we spent $100 on special education this year, we would get $50 back the following year. Last year, they changed it to 80%. And so if we spent $100, the next year we got 80%. And so we saw about a $1.7 million increase in funds that came for special education last year, which is why we were able to reduce the levy 7 cents last year. That we just gave it all back, basically. And so that was helpful to Bennington, which led to the decrease last year. Student enrollment, obviously, were a little bit different, and then talked a little bit about levy reductions. One thing I want to point out for this year is valuations went up 10%. We're going to dig into this a little bit more. Our total revenue, so the total amount of money that we are bringing into our general fund this year is 1.85% less than the previous year. And so we have growth. Obviously, we're dealing with expenses, inflation, like everybody else. Our total revenue is actually decreasing 1.85% this year. Okay, with that, more about the state model and how it works. We have several caps and lids and limits that we have to abide by, and so we're just outlining for you. The general and the special building fund is capped at $1.05, and we earn those are at $1, and so we're below that. We have a budget authority within the ND budget that allows us an increase of 2.5% a year, saying that the total would be $46,883,000, and we were meeting right at that. The cash reserve limit is 25% for a district of our size, and so we could have 13.7 in cash reserves. We have 13.6, so we are under that limit this year. And then a few years ago, they put in a property tax request authority, which is essentially saying if your revenues, total revenues, are more than 2% plus growth, that's all that you're able to grow your total revenues. And so if property taxes went up more than that, you got to come down. You can't get outside of this revenue limit. And so our revenue limit this year, because of our growth, is 4.98%. And so we could have grown the budget by 4.98% total revenue. So our limit this year was 32.2 million, and our tax asking is 28.3 million. Even if we tax $1.05, we couldn't get to our limit at this point because we just don't. The system doesn't work for us in that model. And so we are well below the tax request authority. So that's pretty much how the system works. And so now we can backfill with Bennington information within our expenses. First one's our general fund budget, which we talked about before, at just under 54.9 million. Some information about that. Personnel cost, so that would be a salary, a benefit, anything tied in with a person, is just under 82% of our total personnel cost. Our personnel increased this year 3.1 million, which was 266% of our total increase. How could it be more? Because our accounts payable is going to be a decrease this year. And so pretty much every increase we had this year was due to staff raises or additional staff, which means we look at accounts payable. Accounts payable would be keeping the lights on, it would be our fixed costs, it would be our contracts, it would be our supplies, curriculum, that type of thing. Our accounts payable will be decreasing in our budget almost 17% this year. We had to make the numbers work. And so while we were able to increase our personnel, we've got our accounts payable down 17% this year. With that, we are as of last year, we were the 5th lowest per pupil spending school district in the state of Nebraska. We spend about $4,000 less than the state average. And that's relevant and not relevant in some ways. Bigger school districts were able to be a lot more efficient. And so, there's some schools that have 180 kids and they cover 120 square mile area. They're not very efficient. Their per pupil cost is significantly more than us. And so just by our size, we're able to be in the lower end. But with that, we also just don't have the funds to the equalization aid model to support our students within the classroom, like many of the schools within within the metro or within this area as well. While we are 5th going into this year, I wouldn't be surprised if we took back the #1 spot next year because our revenue is decreasing 2% this year. And so I wouldn't be surprised, but you never know how it shakes out. With that, a breakdown of what our general fund expenditures look like for this year. About 53% is on instructional expenditures, about 13% on special education, 7% on support. State and federal is about 3%. Maintenance and operation of the plant is 11%. Administration is just under 7%, and then the other expenditures are 6%. And so if you want to break down how we got to that number, it's all within there. So that's kind of our expenditure for the year. Talk a little bit about our revenue. And our revenue is what we're going to continue to come back to this year because it's just a super unique situation and it all revolves around our state aid. So we're anticipating, or we know that we're going to receive $14,223,000 in state aid this year. That is a $5.4 million decrease compared to last year. So that is for multiple reasons. The first one, the system we talked about earlier, huge valuation increase last year. We went up 21%. Never even heard of that before in my life, but we did. Now it comes back and it reduces by the exact same amount this year. As our local effort goes up, state aid goes down. So we were able to, by their model, local effort went up by 21%. We know our state aid is coming down. So that was a big portion of it. Along with we were receiving new school adjustment. We had the middle school in South and then Stratford. You get additional funds from the state of Nebraska for 2 years. And so now that we're going into year 3 of those buildings, that falls off of our state aid as well. And so all in, our decrease from last year to this year was $5.4 million. And so this accounts for about 27% of our revenue, which is down 10%. It's the lowest in the school history of state aid as a percentage of our total revenue. And so we're starting the descent down on how reliant we are on state aid at this time. Some schools are 0% when it comes to equalization aid. You can see that orange line, we're on our descent out. But the only way that you descent out is valuation increases. And that's how the model works. So to kind of illustrate this, I want you to look at the cups in the bottom right. The cup is the need for the district that is determined by the state aid model. And so 2023-24, about 36% of our cup, our revenue was filled by the state aid, 41% by property taxes, 22% by other. That would be our special education, that would be motor vehicle, that would be the other revenues that we receive. And so it fills from the bottom up. So the first thing we do is you put in all your other revenues, and then if you tax it $1, that fills the blue portion, and then whatever is left in the cup, the red gets poured on top, and that's our equalization aid or our state aid. And so last year, property taxes accounted for 41% of our total cup. This year, it's about 51%. That's the valuation increase that we talked about. State aid is 36% of the cup. This year, it's 27% of the cup. And so this is how it continues to work. Unequalized districts, which is most, to the right, you can see their cup overflowing. And so you can see that there is no red, and the blue is falling down the sides. When the blue starts falling down the sides, that means that if you tax $1, you have more than what you need, and you can start to look at reducing your levy. For example, the district that I was at before, we had a levy of about 70 cents, a little less than that actually, because we had more potential revenue than we had in need, and so you're able to lower the levy. But in this situation, we can't even fill the cup, and so we're relying on the state aid to do that. The bottom, so even with our property taxes being 41.5%, going to 51%, our total revenue within the general fund is decreasing to 2%, down almost $2 million, $1.8 million from the previous year. And that's just a hard thing to, it's just a tough part of the model that we live in. Okay, the final part of the revenue discussion is our other actual receipts, and I kind of touched on these earlier. This is everything that's not equalization aid, and it's not property taxes. These are all the other ways that we are able to receive revenue, and you can see on the right-hand side, special education is 38% of this total, so it's a huge part. Motor vehicle is the next big one. We get a portion of every motor vehicle taxes, and then federal receipts. Didn't really highlight this, but it was 1.4 million last year. It's now 1 million this year. That's the ESSER funds that were coming. They're now expired, and so this is more what we would anticipate moving forward. So that was just another revenue reduction that we anticipated as well. And then you can see all the others. Okay, so with that, it goes to our property tax request and how we got to these numbers. The general fund property tax request would increase about 3.3 million, representing 51% of the budget like we talked about, and that's a 13% increase, which feels like a lot when you say a 13% increase. It's offsetting part of the $5.4 million that we lost. Obviously, revenue is going down 2%, so it doesn't even make up for it. And so that's what the increase was there, and that's 72% of our total tax asking. The special building fund, we were able to decrease the tax asking by $725,000, or almost 60%, and that represents 1.3% of our total tax asking. Where the bond and QC Puff fund, I put those together because we had bonds out of there. Everything in there was a bond. It's increasing $923,000, which is 10.02%. The valuation was 10.02, keeping the levy rate the exact same. The total was up 10.02%, and that represents 26% of our tax asking. The total levy rate of $1.35.8 is the same as it was last year. Last year, as a reminder, we reduced it 6.76 cents, and so we were able, with that additional SPED funding last year, to lower it. We found a way to just keep it the same this year on the levy. Okay, so I just want to go a little deeper on the bonds, just because obviously we have a lot of bonds within our district being as fast growing as we are, and so just provide some perspective and information as it pertains to those. Our history, 198 million total approved bonds since 2003, and so that would be the expansion from 1 building to 8 buildings, and all those voter approved bonds from 2003 to 2020. With that, we have had since 2016, the levy, and we kind of broke it down in the graph on the right. It's been between the current 35.8 and all the way up to 38 cents. It's kind of hovered right at 35.5 to 38 cents. Again, putting the bond and the QC Puff levies together since all the bonds were in there. Last year was the first time that we were able to lower it in quite a while. We lowered it at 1.8 cents. This year we'd like to keep it the same. A reminder on the QC Puff, we were able to pay off those $4 million worth of bonds a little bit early last year, which then we were able to move that into the bond fund from there to pay off the remainder of those bonds. With that as principle, and this is a discussion item always within our district of, okay, we've had $198 million of approved bonds. What does that look like for our continued outstanding debt? And it's high. I mean, we all know that. We still owe $165 million in outstanding debt. The way that each of those bonds was structured, there was more interest paid on the front end and principal on the back end. But our larger principal payments are showing up now. And so we're starting to see that shift. And so interesting, in the first 20 years we were within $80,000 of what we paid off in principal. In the last 20 years, we're going to pay off the next 5. Look at the range, that was kind of interesting. So we plan to pay off $27.8 million in the next 5 years, $36 million in years 6 to 10, $46 million years 11, and that's 55 left to the final 8 years. And so the larger chunk payments are showing up. So you can see each year on the top graph. This year we're planning to pay off 3.9 million of those bonds, and we are reviewing the possibility of an additional $2 million this year. So that 3.9 might become 5 million. Everything you see on here is planned principal payments, not additional payments, not paying off early, those type of things, just planned payments as of this year. Okay, with that, just kind of end here on the joint public hearing. Because we are able to increase if you increase your tax asking more than 2% plus growth, which for us was 4.98%, then we would have had this hearing, we'd have the option to adopt our budget today. Because we were above that, we have to go to the joint public hearing down at the Douglas County offices for anybody that also didn't meet that criteria, in order to make sure that we tell our story and we hear from the patrons and hear from the public as well. And so that will take place on September 18th. Everybody should start to see a postcard within their mailboxes. September 11th or 12th is what they're saying. It'll be a green postcard that says, this is what your tax asking was last year, this is what your tax asking is this year, this is what this looks like for the upcoming year. Come to the joint public hearing if you want to talk about it. And so people should start seeing those within their mailbox here fairly soon, and then we'll go and present basically this again down at the Douglas County offices as well. And those will be green and in their mailbox, and we will also be broadcasting it out to parents as well through the newsletter so they know to look for it. Short and sweet.
Thank you. Does anyone have any questions? I know we'll have time to talk about our regular working stuff here for the public. All right, so we will now go to the public comment phase of the meeting. And I neglected to mention that our meeting is governed under the Nebraska Community Law copy, which is on the South Wall, and Jody has a copy as well. So we will begin with the public comments on the budget. So if your comments are more focused on the budget, we ask that you speak now, but certainly welcome to speak at either meeting. Looks like we have one. Carol, would you come forward? And just a reminder, the ground rules 5 minutes, and Stacey's going to keep track for me, and so it'll be up there for you as well, Carol. Thank you.
Some of my comments are questions just because I can't remember. I know Dr. Claus did a great job and I can't remember what all the answers were from last year. So I'm going to try and read because he may have answered some. I was trying to take notes. When we do the special building fund, I don't remember like what we can pay out of that. I see the dollars, I just don't remember what can be paid out of that or what can be paid out of the QC stuff. So it's like I see numbers, but I'm like, okay, what do we get to use it for? And then the same with depreciation fund, I believe that's funded depreciation. What kinds of things can we pay out of that? Oh, and for curiosity on the sped reimbursement, does it matter if it's something we do in-house or if there's something we have to outsource, is that the same 80%? I love the fact that we're gonna I hear decrease, and that's always cool, because, my budget seems to be doing that in my house. I was curious, because it said, I think it was in the budget workshop where our 4-year average was like 16%, but this year payables was going down 12%. I don't know if that's just a law of numbers or like what year were we really high? Was that from a new school? Was that from other stuff? Because if we average that with a decrease, the math seems to have to work that way. And then we paid early, if the insurance is, I don't know if that's just a timing thing or what insurance do we pay early? Is that like property and casualty or what was that? Somebody's got answers, sorry. And then I love building and finance, paying down the bonds. I love the fact because we want to get I think, this is Carol's opinion, if we're going to get a bond issue passed, the debt has been a huge thing. So the building and finance committee looking at, okay, it's $2 million. Now that seems small, but I know in fact it's a big number, but compared to our total, it doesn't seem really big. So, and then is there anything more that we can do there? And then my other question is, do we get a pick? I'm sure it's how the bonds are structured, but if we have 2 that we could potentially pay on, do we get a pick which one, like the highest interest rate one or something like that? Or do we not have much control on those when we're paying that down? I think that's it. Thanks.
Anybody else wish to speak? I know we have one additional one. Have to go off for one to talk about the budget. All right, next up is Tracy.
Hi, Tracy Baker. I have just a question too, and I know it should be an email. As far as the state aid, do you have to be at your 1 cent max in order to get state aid? Or, say your levy's at 50 cents? Do you still qualify for state aid? No, okay, I was just curious.
Not equalization.
Okay, not equalization aid, got it, okay. And then, yeah, just a comment, because I had looked through some of the slides, but it's obviously better to hear what Dr. Claus has to say on them. It makes much more sense than trying to decipher it myself. But the slide where you showed the debt pay down over the next several years was very helpful. That was great seeing that, something like that finally. So thank you for including that slide in there. I would just say, I would also like to still see, that's a lot of money. And I know we see balances in the bond fund, but just something similar to that slide of just projecting out over those years that we will have the money in the bond fund without raising that bond levy to cover those expenses that we plan to pay over the next 15, 20 years. Thank you. That's it.
All right, does anybody else wish to speak to the public comment section of the budget hearing? Ice faces. All right, I believe that wraps up our business for this evening with respect to the budget hearing. Is there a motion to adjourn?
I move to adjourn the budget hearing.
Thank you, Tim. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Jeremy. Jody, call the roll.
Christie?
Yes.
Kara?
Yes.
Steve?
Yes.
Allison?
Yes.
Jeremy?
Yes.
Tim?
Yes.
Motion adjourned, or meeting adjourned at 6:30. And we're gonna move right into our regular meeting. So I will call the regular meeting of the Board of Education of Bennington Public Schools to order, September 9th at 6:30 p.m. We will begin with the public forum, but I think our first item is the pledge of allegiance.
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
forum section of the regular board meeting this evening. Our meetings are governed by the draft open meeting law, copy of which is on the back wall. So these are my publication notification. If we have no further public comment, we will move forward with the consent agenda for this evening. This includes approval of the agenda, approval of the minutes from our August 12th City and Board of Education joint meeting, as well as our Monday, August 12th regular board meeting, and our special meeting on August 26th. Who had bills this month? All right, please do. Do you guys have anything you wanted to share with the board with respect to the bills?
Just a couple big things that we had payment, to Douglas County Sheriff for our resource officer, and then also, IXL, which is some other curriculum. So we kind of the big ones that jumped out. Me, Tim and I did separate homework, but I think we both came up with the same answer. Yeah. That's good.
All right, any other questions on the bills this month? Otherwise, is there a motion to approve the consent agenda?
I move to approve the consent agenda as presented.
Thank you, Jeremy. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Tim. Jody, call roll.
Tim,
Yes.
Christie,
Yes.
Kara,
Yes.
Steve,
Yes.
Allison,
Yes.
Jeremy.
Yes.
Motion passes. We'll now move to the reports and presentation section of our board meeting. Begin this evening with Mr. Boyce, our elementary school report.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Chad Boyce, Anchor Point Elementary Principal. Just a couple things to cover. At the start of the year, we set expectations, we put those procedures into place, and this year we really made it a point as 5 elementary schools to really focus that attention on positivity and how we can get people. In the picture there, you see some of our kids getting 5 Ticket Fridays. We have door hangers. We have all those different ways that we want to celebrate our kids. And I think you can tell by their faces that they're pretty excited that they got those tickets. And, you know, as a principal, when you can find manners and methods like that to motivate kids, it warms your heart. The other part I want to talk about is I just want to thank the Bennington Public Schools Foundation. We have a picture there of one of our kindergarten signs. With all the roofing signs that were out, it was kind of nice to see a change of scenery with our future graduates. So in the neighborhood where I'm at, Stratford, it was neat to see a graduate of 2024 and a future graduate of 2037 living right next door to each other. So it was neat that those signs were out there. But and I kind of ended the report up there with our crews, our family units. Those are mixed age level groupings of kids. All 5 of the schools do those on one of the releases. We take a 30-minute time. They're great lessons. I have my own crew. I've got 15 to 17 kids, and we talk about whatever comes out of our behavior referrals, our teacher recommendations, things that we've seen from the prior year. We build our lessons around that. So it's a good opportunity for teachers to get to know kids outside of their grade level and also make those connections in the hallways when you see that and say, oh yeah, these kids travel with us. So they come in, they may start with me in kindergarten, they leave elementary in 5th grade, still having me as their crew supervisor. So it's another adult, another trusted adult that we can get to our students and just help support as they move through school. So this school is really hard, especially for our little ones. So, what questions do you have for me? Thank you.
Thanks, Chad. Thank you.
Thank you. Next up is Mrs. Rucker for the middle school.
All right, Renee Rucker, middle school principal. Well, we are also in full swing with academics and with activities at the middle school. I was really excited about the numbers. We have 40% of our kids, or about 290 students between 7th and 8th grade involved in activities at both buildings. We also have a lot of kids involved in music, a band, choir, orchestra, or some of our after-school clubs. Really at the middle school level is all about growing as an individual and just being part of that community. And we were so excited that our PTOs combined efforts before the first fall football game and put on a tailgate. We had a great turnout, walked the kids over. It was just a wonderful way, once again, to build that community and help our kids get connected to school. Because we do know that research shows kids that are connected to school, they achieve better, they attend school, and it makes it an all-around better experience. Questions for me?
All right, Mr. Larry, the high school.
Good evening, Greg Lamberty, Bennington High School Principal. Just point out a few things about our monthly report. First one is parking. As you can see, we have about 40 stalls based on tag numbers. When we go out and walk the lot, what we consider peak time is third and fourth hour when every kid is in our building. There's about 20-ish, 25 stalls available in those two main lots. And there's about 10 stalls left in the freshman lot. Unfortunately, those are probably gonna get gobbled up as the year goes because kids don't get younger, they get older, and when they get older, they get licenses. When they get licenses, they get cars. So, homecoming week, we're one day down, 5 days to go, including the Saturday dance. Mrs. Lytle and Mrs. Thorson are our student senate sponsors this year. They've done a great job organizing the themes, the days, kind of the way the week goes. Friday's pep rally, we always try to hold that outside of the stadium, weather permitting, in the middle of the day. So that'll go off, and then we have the game with the fireworks to follow that night. Then our dance will be Saturday night from 8 to 11 at the high school. And then the last thing I'll point out is just, our fall participation numbers, just so everybody sees those. The levels are listed after the numbers, and then also included the instrumental music numbers, because this is the first year where we're offering two sections of band. We have varsity band first hour, and then we have a freshman band third hour, and those numbers pulled up each one for. Questions for me?
Any changes this year for homecoming dance, just kind of keep any of the tomfoolery under control? Or-
Sure, that's a great question. We are going to utilize breathalyzers this year. And so that will be communication. That was in communication and went out to parents over this prior weekend as we outlined the entire week. And as we get closer to Saturday, we will be very specific with the procedures and whatnot. The deputy rainmaker and some of his deputies will be there to breathalyze each student. We're not doing it randomly. Every kid that goes into the dance will be breathalyzed before their ticket is scanned.
And would you do the same thing if they leave, they have to call their parents?
Yep, so another good question, 8 to 10. We do ask that every kid is in the dance by 9 o'clock. Now, we do have a group of softball players. They're in a tournament Saturday, and if that tournament were to run late or get delayed, we would obviously make some exceptions for them to get in before the 9 o'clock deadline. And then after 9 o'clock, we are simply going to scan the exit ticket, which is what we did at prom last year. So we have record, but we are not going to call parents after that first hour. So it's honestly become an overwhelming task, and with 800, 900 kids in there that are trying to come and go after 9 o'clock, we'd rather be looking at restrooms and some of the places in the facility than standing by the door calling every parent. Good questions.
Hey, Greg, how's a band going, the freshman band this year? Is it well received, I should say?
Well received, as in parents are supportive. We'll take silence as the feedback has been positive. I think Mr. Koga deserves a lot of credit for trying to address growth within his program, as well as constraints that are put on more so by the facility. So what happens is the freshman band kids are marching. I think that's important to note that part of the program has not been removed. We've strategically put it in third hour because it backs up 2 days a week to our advisory period. So those kids on Tuesday, Thursday get an additional 20 minutes, which gives them essentially an hour to get out to the stadium. They do have a routine and a performance that they will perform at some point in a public manner, whether that's a football game or the marching band in October. But it has been positive. Yeah.
Glad to hear that.
Yeah, I wouldn't say there haven't been hiccups, but it has been positive, and kids are getting attention to their musicianship, and they are developing both individually and as a collective group. You're welcome. Thank you for supporting me.
Any truth to the rumor that you're leaving the conga line at the homecoming dance? That's what I heard in the halls.
That is a false rumor. Thank you.
Thank you.
And then on social media.
I started the rumor.
I
can help make it a reality.
I'm Ian Mombeck, Director of Student Services. I have just a few things I want to highlight today. First, I want to talk about the ELL program. We currently have 62 active students, 63 on monitor status. And last year, we were fortunate enough to graduate 24 students, but as you can see at the bottom, 28 new students are screened and needed those services to replace those 24 students. So we continue to have a relatively robust program for 1.5 FTE of ALL programming, and along with 2 paraprofessionals that support that program as well. On the backside, or on the second page, I'd like to highlight the Games on the Green. This is our 3rd annual Games on the Green. This is a great celebration, bringing individuals with special needs as well as their peer mentors and models come in and participate with local and, our neighboring districts in a series of activities and just promote camaraderie and friendship between the various school districts. Any questions?
Thank you.
All right, Mr. Keeney, you're up. Let's try to be easy on you for your first go around.
Aaron promised you wouldn't be, so go. I'm just kidding. Jimmy Feeney, Director of Secondary Education. In my report, you'll see probably the biggest news on there would be the Nebraska Department of Education. They just recently decided to go with NWA again for their assessment. This is relevant because right now our norms reference assessment, criterion reference assessment are both NSCAS. This year we are in an adoption, so those two dovetail really nicely together, so we can make a decision of if that's what we want to continue using for our norms reference assessment. So our adoptions are underway. We'll kick off that assessment one next week, which is exciting. And also just, like I said, you love it when it makes sense like that, it comes together in that way. The other thing that you like to highlight this time of year is to start the year, although it's not always the best timing, you give a lot of training to teachers, you bring in your new teachers, you get new students. And I think the thing that I enjoy the most is when you see those kids in the hallway and you get to see that energy. And our 44 teachers are doing great. So they'll continue their professional learning plan. So from an induction standpoint, we'll continue to support them throughout the year. But the kids are excited, and when you ask the teacher how things are going, nothing but compliments about the administration and the teachers. So always a good sign when you're in and out of the buildings asking those questions. Anything else I can answer questions about?
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, you're up after applause.
All right, got a few things to talk about here within my report. The first 2 are kind of a recap from items that we discussed last month. First is the legislative session. We didn't really know how that was going to end a month ago, but it has since ended on August 20th with 5 measures that were passed and then became operative a day later. They implemented the school district property tax reduction relief act. I think I said that all right. Essentially where there is $75 million that would go into this fund for property tax relief in 2024, and it slowly escalates up to $902 million in 2029. It's multifaceted how this works. As of today, if you pay your school district property taxes, let's say that you pay those in 2023. In April 2024, you have your income taxes, you can claim a credit for about 25% of what you paid to the school district that would come back in your income taxes. They got rid of that system because going from property taxes and income taxes and credits, and they weren't claimed by, I think like they're saying like 65 to 60% of people actually claimed it, and they just front loaded it. And so now, instead of having to claim that on your income taxes, if you owed, well, I'm just going to use an easy number, $10,000 in property taxes, 25% of that's just going to come off the front end. And so you only pay the $7,500 of property taxes. And so that is the largest part of the new tax plan. There was an increase of, I think, $185 million into that fund compared to the credit compared to the front loading. And so Bennington property taxpayers should see that front-end relief beginning next year. I know there was a lot of banter throughout the course of the special session, but as of this moment, the governor has stated that he doesn't plan to have another special session. And so it looks like we're going to January for legislative items moving forward. Any questions on that one? Good. Next one is our non-voter survey. I don't know if that's the best name for it, but that's what I went with. It was a survey of those that did not vote on the 2024 bond issue, and just what they thought of it, so we could try to have a better idea of what our community expects, not just those that voted, but those that chose not to vote as well. And so I got a building finance committee after the last meeting, so we didn't know what we were going to do, and elected to end the non-voter survey just due to the complexities of getting people to respond, and the fact that the responses that we were receiving were pretty much in line with what we were receiving from the voters as well. Reduce the levy, work on the bond debt, and then improve communication. We kept seeing those same three, even with the non-voter survey as well. And so working through that, the committee discussed the importance of just continuing to methodically work through the potential for a new bond and what that could look like to ensure we meet our community needs. Let's not rush anything. So let's not think about that November election. Let's just keep working our way to where we feel like we are being responsive to the community needs. Next item I had on there was the Eastern Midlands Conference, just kind of an update on our conference for the year. It's kind of a good time to do it at the beginning of the year. The EMC conference has fluctuated over the last several years just based on its location and the types of schools that are within it. We do have 11 schools in the EMC this year because we added Gretna High School and Gretna East this year as well. Moving forward, though, the conference is going to continue to have some oddities because it has expressed its desire to continue to be a Class B conference, as the EMC has been for forever. But there are a lot of schools that are projecting into Class A. Bennington will be Class A in 26-27. There's no way around it. It's what we're going to be in 26-27. Gretna East, Elkhorn North, Standing Bear, Lincoln Northwest, those schools also have the potential to become a Class A over the next 1, 2, 3, 4 years. And so while the conference is in a really good standing right now at 11, depending on how they want to treat those that are going into Class A, we don't know what the future is going to hold with that. I had to look it up, but we have been a member of EMC for the last 13 years. So pretty good conference to us. With that, we are just being really communicative with the conference, making sure they know our situation, where we're at, what's happening. That's the best that we can probably do at this time. Last one I was going to talk about is just our Arbor Family contract. Our Arbor Family Counseling is what we utilize for our student assistance program, our employee assistance program, and some outside counseling services that are desired by their families. And we have been with Arbor Family for 15 to 20 years. I couldn't get an exact date, but it's been quite a while. Last year's expenditures for those three programs about $120,000. Our contract we signed for this year is 127. It represented exactly a 7% increase. What's unique about our contract is it's only for services utilized. So if we've never used a single hour of counseling services, we wouldn't pay it. It's just a way for us to fix it over time as opposed to all in one lump amount. So if we utilize the whole contract, we would still be well below the number of hours that were approved at 1,320 from the 2022 curriculum proposal process. So it doesn't represent even all the hours that were approved during that time. That's it for me.
Do you have any questions? Thank you. All right, that moves us to our committee reports. I know building and finance being met, but summarized your superintendent's report pretty accurately what we discussed our last meeting. Do you guys have anything else to add?
Sorry to steal the thunder.
That's okay.
It's all good.
Do we have any other committee reports that we want to discuss? The curriculum committee just met, so we'll hear about that next month. And our policy committee has a meeting scheduled, so we'll begin our annual review of the policies that we schedule for review each year. All right, that brings us to our coordinator report on communications. Stacy on.
Okay, just gonna get started. All right, Stacy Martin, communications coordinator, so I'm just gonna kind of go through what we did last year, some wins, some things that we implemented, and then plans for this year. So look back at last year, we sent a total of 82 staff and parent newsletters. On average, our staff, each newsletter was read 946 times, which is a lot, especially when we had right around 500 staff. So that means that they look at it, they go back and reference it throughout the year, so that is a good thing. And our parents, it's average read 5,111 times each week. Sometimes it's higher, sometimes it's lower, so. We shared a lot of stories and information on our Facebook. Went through last school year, we had a total reach of over 72,000 people and over 49,000 visits to the page, and we gained almost 900 new followers last year. We did publish and mail out the 22-23 annual report. It did receive a National Award of Excellence from the National Public Relations Association. And we established website guidelines and expectations with our school webmasters, worked with them, did some training to make sure our websites continue to stay up to date. We did create a communication hub for staff members on our intranet to kind of give them a spot to be able to find some of the communication pieces we send each year and different touch points and make sure that they are easily found. We established an employee recognition program. This was the Shine Your Light Award. It was sponsored by our foundation, and we had a total of 503 staff members nominated. Nominations submitted. There could be some for multiple staff members. And then we had 20 that we recognized at a monthly Shine Your Light, where we went out to the school and recognized them with a gift as well. We also did an employee appreciation program, which was also solely funded by our foundation. We gave each employee a gift of appreciation each month. We went with a lapel pin, tumbler, notebook, pens, s'more kit, umbrella, blanket, and a summer basket as well. So those were really well received. We got some feedback, and I'll talk about that as well later as what our plan is for this year. I did conduct a staff and parent communication survey. 41% of staff completed that, 23% of parents. Majority of staff members prefer their communication from the district via email and believe that they are receiving the right amount of information. 82% of parents gave the district communication a grade of either an A or a B. And parents voiced that they prefer to be communicated with emails and text messages. So I have some objectives that I just kind of base all of my plan off of for the year. So those are up there. We're going to go through each one. First one we'll go through is our brand. And so continue to develop the brand and make sure that there is access to that and look into trademarking of the Bennington Bee and some of those. Continuing to tell our story of the amazing thing happening in all of our classrooms each and every day. And then we'll continue to work with our school webmasters to ensure that our websites are up to date. Second one is staff climate and culture and creating that awareness for them as well. So we will continue the staff newsletter as well as that is very well read. That goes out each week. Continue to add to the communication hub as we add things to that. We're going to continue the Shine Your Light recognition program. Our staff really love that. You'll see a picture up there of Mrs. Camp getting her monthly one. We are going to continue employee recognition or appreciation, but we're going to revise that. We're not going to do monthly gifts this year. Some of our feedback was they want something a little bit more personalized, and so we are going to focus on more personalized gifts and recognition through a couple of different ways. And then my goal would be in this spring is to conduct a communication survey to evaluate some of these plans. And then connecting parents to the classroom, continue that, the parent newsletter, that Badger update that goes out every Friday, continue to publish the annual report, continue to use social media and share those stories and information through there. Design school communication cards, kind of help where if a parent comes to the school, especially new parents, you can show them exactly where they can find certain information, what newsletters come out when, so that way it's an easy grasp for them. And then conduct a communication survey in the spring. And then I will be evaluating the mass communication systems in the district. So continuing to develop a need of what that is, which that would be like our calling system. Right now we have school messenger that does the calling and texting and emailing. And then that includes the website and app, and really seeing what our needs are, and then doing an RFP process to see what system truly fits the needs that we have today. Any questions for me? Thank you.
Thank you.
Great with you next.
All right, no lobbyist report this evening, so I think that brings us to our new business.
Spotlight. Oh,
Sorry. I figured we already put you through the ringer tonight, so.
After I did about pull the hamstring around that.
I applaud you for trying to end the meeting well. Okay, I'm back, AP and dual enrollment, just gonna highlight a few things. As with most things I do, I put together a great presentation, in my opinion, and think of about 47 things that I should have included. So as I go through each slide, I won't insult your intelligence, I'm not gonna read it to you, I'll just kind of point out a few other things that might be interesting about it. So AP and dual enrollment. Again, they are separate, and we'll get to that. I think one piece that's not on here, that K through 8 do a really good job of, is they have a HOW program. And they address the high ability learners and give them opportunities to enrich their learning, challenge their learning. And so when we get to the high school, we don't have a formal HOW program. And the AP program starts to serve the needs or address the needs of those students that are looking for more rigorous courses, want to challenge themselves, take a look at probably what a college type or college level course is. It allows them to get a little bit more in depth. But that is the ultimate reward is that last bullet there, an AP course, not a dual enrolled course, just an AP course does give a kid a half a point bump on their GPA. So an A is a 4.5, a B is a 3.5, and on down the line. So they do receive that on their GPA. The big differences, AP Advanced Placement is endorsed by the College Board. So there is an organization at the national level that regulates that. Our teachers that are teaching AP level courses basically take their syllabus and their qualifications, and they have to renew that every year. There are AP College Board workshops throughout the year that we do send staff to, particularly those that are new to teaching AP classes. And so they go to 2 or 3 day seminars and trainings, learn how to audit their sources, learn how to meet the requirements, and then they submit their syllabus, their books, in the case of an English class, for review, and then they receive approval. A lot of times, a teacher like Laura McGrew or Luke Olson, that's traditionally a formality, but as with everything, College Board does change some courses and change their content, so they have to stay on top of that and make sure they're addressing those standards. The AP exam is not required if you're in an AP class. That's still a choice that a kid can take. Like, you can take the AP course, get the half a point bump, and not take the AP exam. However, that's typically the biggest carrot, is if you take the AP exam, it's scored on a 1 to 5 rubric, 1 being the lowest, 5 being the highest. Typically, if a kid scores a 3, 4, or 5, that college credit becomes something that they will enter their 4-year or 2-year university with in their pockets. So cost savings, the AP exam is, it is $99 this year to take for each exam. So when you take that and move it towards the potential of a 3 credit class at the college level of being $1,500, I mean, you're probably saving you and your parents or whoever quite a bit of money. Dual enrollment, on the other hand, is endorsed by a specific institution. So we work primarily with UNL. We do have a couple metro courses. Those institutions specifically approve our teachers, whether that's a master's degree needed in a specific content area, again, a syllabus. In some cases, UNO will have the teacher go through a seminar to reach the requirements so that we can offer that at the high school. But again, it typically relies on the syllabus and the teacher degree qualifications being approved by that institution. The entire course grade establishes the credit, okay? Meaning that Kale Lamberty takes biology, dual enrolled biology. It is the final grade of that year is whether or not that credit is recognized. Now, one of the bigger differences between the two, in most cases, and I say in most cases, AP exam credits typically transfer universally, meaning you get a 5 on an AP exam, that's going to be accepted for credit at Nebraska, Kansas, Michigan, Colorado, wherever. The dual enrollment credit oftentimes is only accepted within certain circuits of university systems, meaning UNO, that credit is probably transferable to Wayne State, UNL, Kearney, Chadron. If you step outside of that circuit, go to say Missouri, Wichita, Wichita State, typically out of state, those universities define how they're going to accept dual enrollment. So you might take dual enrolled physics, but when you go to your university, they won't take it as physics credit. They might give it as elective credit, but not for that specific content area. That makes sense? Made sense to me, so. Okay, those are just the lists, the offerings of dual enrollment, AP Bio, AP English Literature, Mrs. Jones, Intro to Education with Mrs. Guinan, AP Geography at this time with Mr. Deerdoff, Psychology with Mr. Tom Olson, AP Stats, Aaron Carter, AP Spanish with Tasha Horn, and then Metro Community College, we have a modular math course taught by Mrs. Carter and web design by Mr. Wright. The items here that are asterisk are, those are serving as dual. So they are dual enrollment and advanced placement courses. So a kid in there can do one or both, okay? Government is one that we've added this year, and pre-calculus is another one. We approved those through, or you approved those through the curriculum and personnel proposal last year. And I will tell you, those two courses that are approved, they're popular. Kids are taking them, and they're taking them to the point where they threw off our projected numbers, meaning that we have, I think, 3 sections of AP government, and therefore the regular government classes still being taught, but those numbers are lower. So we're gonna have a little work to do with our projection numbers a year from now in terms of building the master schedule. And the same thing with pre-calculus. We have 2 sections of pre-calc running close to 40-some kids. Regular pre-calc has about 20 kids. So they're, again, it's just thrown, kids are taking the classes, which is good, but it's lightening the load in some other classes, which will be like I said, it'll be a little bit of a challenge. Scores and celebrations. 232. There was the average score across all tests this last year was 3.41, which is pretty good. 9 of the 11 courses had cumulative scores higher than the state average. We did have the last bullet there is pretty cool. Like every kid that took AP chemistry got a 3 or higher. Same with calculus, English lit, and statistics. It's pretty impressive stuff. I talked a little bit about cost savings. Dual enrollment per course is $250. Okay, so a kid chooses to enroll in that. There's about a 4-week enrollment period that UNO rep came in a week ago, and kids and families have the opportunity to decide whether or not they want to do that. A 3-credit course at UNO runs you about $1,250. So you choose to do that course with us, earn the credit, you're going to save your family about $1,000. Like I said, the AP exam and those things they go up about $1 a year. So, it's not how I do it, but that's how they do it. So you just kind of got to track that. And that is a partnership with our foundation where kids don't need to take that. Once they've taken the exam, we typically reimburse them certain costs to do that as well. So, on the teacher side of things, there are some incentives in there that play into maybe choosing to be AP teacher. We do have an AP teacher stipend where there's 100 hours, $1,500 is attached to 100 hours of time for the teacher, 30 hours of prep and coursework, 70 hours of contact time. So being available outside of the school day, Saturday morning, before school, after school, to assist your kids. Teachers log those hours, they turn them in, and that is $1,500 that they're provided. There is another $500 attached to a cumulative score of 3 or higher, and then another $500 attached to 50% of your enrolled kids taking the test or not. So in total, there's $2,500 attached to a teacher stipend for an AP teacher. For a dual enrolled teacher, we pay them $300 per section per class. So if a teacher has 4 sections of, say, Aaron Carter has 4 sections of stats, that would be $1,200 that she receives in the semester for her efforts to provide that opportunity. Last year, we had 111 students enroll for dual enrollment in the fall, and then 38 in the spring. So why is there such a big difference? Obviously, the fall is the one-time enrollment for biology, stats, along those lines, intro to education, and one other one, web design, I believe. I shouldn't misspeak, but there is the opportunity to enroll for that second semester class. So those are the numbers they've gone up over the course of, we started in 2017. The lowest year we had was the COVID year, obviously, with 18 kids, but we are trending towards close to 200 kids here in the next year, pending the personnel and class and demand for those to continue to offer them. Questions for me? I think that's it.
No questions.
Still no comment line.
All right, now that brings us to our new business this evening, which is to review the 24-25 budget projections and the timeline. Talk a little bit about, walk through some of that with us.
Yeah, just an opportunity for the board to ask any questions. Obviously, we had a public hearing earlier, and so I was more for the public, but be available to answer any questions that you have. A couple things I want to point out. Most everything we talked about before was NDE budget, and so some of that was worst case scenario. Some was actual, but I just want to point out a few things from our actual budget. We're anticipating our total expenditures this year to be about 2.26% increase year over year. And so the revenues are down, obviously, in there, but our actual expenditure is about 2.26. The budget does leave some room if we want to pay down some of those bonds early, and that's why we want to make sure that that was available within there. Other items, so expenses are increased to 2.26. We talked about revenues going down to 1.85. So it'll be an interesting year financially for us, but we've kind of seen this coming. Our 3-year budget estimate, so last year and prior years, we always look not just a 1 year, that's a little bit short-sighted, especially in the equalization aid system that we have. We got a forecast over a 2-3 year period. And so when you forecast this out now, this year, the next 2 years, we're showing a revenue surplus of $197,000 over those 3 years. That's $197,000 on, $150 million over the 3-year period of expenditures. But we're basically forecasting out almost exactly even at this moment, assuming we're able to keep some levies the same, assuming valuation increases at what we're expecting. A lot of assumptions, but we're in a lot better situation. Last year when we were doing this, we were about a $7 million deficit over those 3-year period. We're back to even this year, mostly because of this year. We knew this year was going to be a struggle on the revenue side. And so should be in fairly good shape there moving forward. Other than that, I'm available for questions.
Dr. Kloss, remind me on that, because we already implemented that $2 million principal payment. How much interest was that? Was that almost $1 million on those bonds that we were looking at?
So there's multiple options we were looking at. The first was a cash tender, so essentially paying down some bonds through a little bit different mechanism, which I believe is the mechanism that the building finance wants to pursue, but we'll have DA Davidson come out and kind of walk you through all of it. But that would be an expense of $1.6 million for us, but it would relieve 2.5 or 2.6 million of the total what we would have paid, and so we'll save $1 million. If we didn't go that option, we just went with a straight bond pay down of $2 million, we'd save about, I think it was $500,000 or $600,000 as well. So,
Thank you.
Yep. So I think to Carol's point, $2 million as compared to our total debt is a lot, but it's better. I mean, we're always doing something to do the best we can with what we have. And so every little bit helps.
Any other questions on the budget? Three of us have spent a lot of presentation, 3 or 4 times, so I don't really have a ton of additional questions. That's okay, learn something new every time, so that's good. I appreciate your communicating all the details and giving everybody the history of it. Things take more and more time to read, so. Anything else? Okay. All right, I think the next item for us is going into executive session to discuss some pending litigation. So I move that we enter a closed session for the purpose of holding a strategy session regarding pending litigation as an executive session is clearly necessary for the protection of the public interest.
Second.
Thank you, Jeremy. Judy, call the roll.
Jeremy?
Yes.
Tim?
Yes.
Christie?
Yes.
Kara?
Yes.
Shannon?
Yes.
Allison?
Yes. Motion passes, and we do not anticipate any action following executive session for folks that are something like stay for updates. And just a reminder on our next board meeting, there's extra meetings in here. So the regular meeting is scheduled for October 14th, and that's at 6 o'clock here in the district office. We do have a special meeting scheduled for September 23rd, which will be the budget approval meeting at 5 o'clock here. And that will be following our tax testing hearing, so we can respond to those comments. And then we do have the curriculum meeting that today, obviously, and then we're meeting as a policy committee to discuss the next section of the budget or the policies on the 23rd of September. And then for board members that are interested in the Nebraska Association of School Boards area membership meetings, please let Jody know. All right, I believe that will be it. We'll go into session.
Thank you.
Anybody needs their paper signed, can they come up?